Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our eighth and final athlete development workshop. For this workshop, we have two presenters. So first we start with Mr. Terry Finister, and I'll let you know a little more about him. An award-winning sports journalist, Terry has worked with a number of local, regional, and international agencies in a career spanning over 2 decades. He has hosted World Cup football coverage for HTS and athletics competitions, including Carifta Games, the Commonwealth Youth Games, and the World Championships for Flow Sports, CBU, and Winners TV. He has written extensively for World Athletics, World Football Governing Body FIFA, and Volleyball World Governing Body FIBA. Along with two-time Olympian and Caribbean record holder for men's pole vault Dominic Johnson, Terry worked on facilitating college and university scholarship opportunities in the United States and covering collegiate and professional athletes from the sub-region in football, golf, athletics, volleyball, swimming, and basketball, among others. Father of two, Terry is a World Athletics qualified technical official and throwing events coach, and has been working with four-time national champions Monsters Athletics Club for more than 10 years. So today we have Mr. Finister, who's just going to give us some more insight into sports, and I think this is going to be a very informative session. I hope everyone interacts when needed. Over to you, Mr. Finister.
Good evening, and thanks for having me on this session. I won't be sharing my screen as I indicated to you previously. Initially, I had been meant, I think, to speak on social media, which we might be able to touch on as we get into the weeds. But I noticed that we're actually going to be looking at elite athlete development, whereas I don't have specific notes on that. It is something that I'm very happy and comfortable speaking to. First, obviously, I mean, we have to define terms. I've actually rejoined from my phone, so it might be a little bit shaky, but let's define the term. So we're looking at an elite athlete, I think in our context, as being somebody who's able to compete at the international level. What you think an elite athlete is, what defines and what is meant by the phrase elite athlete. But having said that, there two principal things that I want to just touch on when we look at what an elite athlete is and how do you develop or create an elite athlete. And there are two perspectives I think we can look at, two principal perspectives. And the main things are, what can you do? You as an athlete, what can you do to become an elite athlete? And what can those around you do? And when we look at those around you, there are going to be a number of people that I'm going to talk about. And what can you do? The first thing that you have to understand is how or what is the pathway to your goal. What your goal is to be able to compete at the international level, to be competitive at the international level, perhaps to get to the Olympics, perhaps to get to the West Indies senior team, perhaps to be a collegiate athlete at Division 1, to become a footballer, to become a professional footballer, to become a professional netballer, basketballer, whatever the case may be. So that's your goal. How do you achieve that? And how do you go from where you are to where you want to be? Self-assessment is the first and most critical tool that you have. And so you must look at, where am I? What am I doing? Write that down. Take your time to really actually set out, this is who I am. This is my identity as an athlete. I am competing at the national level. Here are my personal best. How do they compare with those around me? Am I one of the best at what I'm doing at my age? Or am I one of the best historically at my age? Whatever the case may be. But do some critical self-assessment and really
determine for yourself where you are and what it is that you are doing well and what it is that you need to do to be able to move on to the next level. Your goal in basketball, I want to go to the NBA. What's your goal in athletics? I want to go to the Olympics. And that's great. That's a great goal. But you have to really figure out how you are going to achieve that. And you have to do that step by step. It's not going to be one big jump. It's going to be, I'm going from a club level athlete to being one of the best club level or one of the best school level athletes in the island. And you're going to take that and you're going to move that up to the next level. I'm going to become one of the best athletes in the region, in the Caribbean, or if you want to look more broadly, at the Commonwealth or whatever have you. I'm going to become one of the best at that level, and then I'm going to move up to the next level. And even within those broad, these are still broad steps, because within those broad steps, you have to look and see, okay, what is it that I need to do in order to make that step up to the next level? Is it that I need to become a more diligent performer in a particular aspect of the discipline that I'm doing? Is it that I need to become faster, stronger, to have more endurance? Is it a skill-related issue? Do I need to really break down what it is that I'm doing in terms of my skill set and learn some of these things? Do I need to change my coaching situation? Do I need to change, my nutrition? Do I need to change my sleep patterns? A lot of young people I know sleep at all sorts of crazy hours, and even a lot of athletes sleep at all kinds of crazy hours, and they don't take proper care of themselves from that regard, don't give their bodies time to rest and recuperate. They don't give themselves time for their bodies to recharge and reset for the next day. So that is, one of the things that you have to think of. But overall, key thing that I want to leave you with in this part of the conversation is planning. You have to really conceptualize. You have to think of how it is you're going to create that journey for yourself. How is it that you're going to move from being where you are, maybe a good or even a great school athlete? You might be the best in your school, and a lot of the kids say, boy, I'm the best in my school. I have records at my school. Unfortunately, a lot of our young athletes end up just being the best at their school for their entire life because they have never taken that step up. And it requires you being able to leave your comfort zone. It requires you being able to really, move outside of yourself and look very critically at yourself. Take a serious look at yourself and really determine what it is that you are missing to be able to move on. Two of the things that I think are crucial. One is that you must practice. Practice makes perfect, or practice doesn't make. There's another phrase, it's not practice makes perfect, but practice makes permanent. Yes, practice makes permanent. So when you do something over and over and over, you're not necessarily going to be perfect at it, but you're certainly going to have that skill or that whatever it is that you're training ingrained in you. So to give you a simple example from athletics, I mean, if you're only ever doing sprinting, if you're only ever doing, say, 60-meter sprints, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to excel as a 10,000-meter runner. Or you're never going to reach your full potential as a 10,000-meter runner if all you're doing is 60-meter sprints. If all you're doing is 60-meter sprints, you're only training your fast-twitch muscles. You're only training your anaerobic respiratory system. You're only training those things that are pertinent or that are going to contribute to you being a better sprinter. And you are not doing anything that is going to help you become a better 10,000-meter runner. Right? So if that's all you're doing, you're not going to be maximizing your potential. You're not going to be doing the best thing possible for you to become a 10,000-meter runner. If you're a basketballer and you're always off playing football at 17 or 18 years old, then it's very unlikely that you're going to be maximizing your ability to become the best possible basketballer that you can. Having said that, though, it's important to note that a lot of our elite athletes, a lot of our top athletes have what we call the principle of variability ingrained in them at a very young age. And the principle of variability in coaching says that you want to expose athletes to a number of different stimuli. You want to expose them to a number of different aspects of physical development. And certainly you even want to expose them to a number of different sports at a very young age. So children should not be specializing to a very high degree. So if you intend at some point, that if you're a parent, for instance, or a coach, and you intend for your child to become a top footballer in 10, 15 years, the best thing for that child is not to just play football. The best thing for that child is to do a number of different things, to become a sprinter, to become a middle distance athlete if need be, to become a basketballer, to be exposed to netball, be exposed to all sorts of volleyball. You want to ingrain basic movement patterns. You want to be able to do the movements, and you want to be able to activate the neurons or the neuromuscular processes that are germane to your sport at a very high level. But you also want to be able to adapt to any situation that comes up on the court, on the field, whatever the case may be. And in order for you to do that, the best thing for you to do is at a very young age for you to be able to do a number of different sports. So if you are thinking, or if you're a child yourself, I don't think we have any really young children here this evening, but if you are a child or the parent of a child that you are hoping one day they're going to become a really top basketballer, footballer, or whatever have you, the best thing that you can do for that child is to allow them to play, to have fun, and to be exposed to a number of different sports. So the principle of variability is very important. Having said that, it's also crucial that you train in the fundamentals, that you are taught the fundamentals, the basics of catching, running, jumping, throwing, whatever is germane and relevant to the sport that you intend to excel in. You have to really understand, and you really have to have instilled in you at a very basic level the core units of that sport. So you must train assiduously in those core elements, in those fundamentals, the basics of whatever sport it is that you intend to do. So that's really very important. So it's training, but training in the right things. Just repetition and repetition of bad movement patterns, repetition of movements, or repetition of specific training that is just for the sake of it. So if you're just doing something and doing it over and over, but never learning from it, never correcting yourself, never doing self-correction, your coach is never correcting you, your teammates are never correcting you. If you're doing, I can give you an example. There's a specific stretch, which I could show it to you right now, but there's a specific stretch that a lot of athletes come to me and they do it really, really badly, and they're actually putting themselves in danger. It's a stretch for your glutes, and they just grab their ankle and they just yank it up. And they tell me, boy, maybe they've come from another sport or they've come from another coaching situation, and that's how they learn to do it. That's how they figure that it's supposed to be done. So they've been doing this stretch over and over and over again, but they've actually never stretched a muscle that they're supposed to be stretching in that particular movement. And so if you're just doing something over and over and you're not learning from it, you're not correcting, you're not self-correcting, you're not feeling, you're not understanding why it is that you are doing that particular movement, or you're not undergoing that particular process, a formula for success. In fact, that is a formula according to Albert Einstein for insanity. And last but certainly not least, I want to say to the athletes in particular among us, and certainly to the coaches as well, it's crucial to understand that you must develop a particular mentality in And that mentality, I mean, people talk about championship mentality and winning mentality, but really it's about being able to overcome challenges, being able to put yourself in the best position to succeed, is being able to look at the situation and to see ways of winning in that situation. So, you know, you can use the shorthand winner's mentality or whatever have you, and that's fine, but you have to understand what that entails and how it translates, I should say, to you as an athlete. And so mental training, I think, is absolutely important. Psychology is important. I always say that for you to become a really unstoppable athlete, for you to become a truly elite athlete, you must have, as part of your team, some sort of therapy, some sort of psychologist, some sort of support for that aspect of your person. I mean, we all humans, we all get depressed or sad or get down on ourselves. We all think at some point in time that we can't make it, we can't get it done. So it's important to have somebody who is going to support you, somebody who believes in you, and somebody who is going to help you learn how it is that you can believe in yourself and that you can better yourself as an athlete and as a person. Because an elite athlete is somebody who has a certain mindset, as a person who has a certain mentality about them, that they believe that they belong, that they believe that they can compete at that level. And then again, we're talking about competing at that international level. Now, what can people around you do to support you or to develop you as an elite athlete, or to develop elite athletes on the whole? And I'm going to speak here about three broad groups of people: government, one, federations, and the parents. Not necessarily in any given order per se, but one of the things that people often talk about is they talk about investment, and they talk about, you know, even some sports leaders talk about how we need more money for sport, we need more money, we need more money. And whereas I think money can help, you know, putting money behind anything can help, but if you're not using that money wisely, if you're not investing properly, it's pointless just throwing money into anything. You're not going to grow just by putting money. You have to grow by putting money in an intelligent fashion, and you have to grow by putting money into developing your resource base. All right. And when I talk about developing your resource base, I'm speaking about, you know, grooming coaches. I'm speaking about grooming administrators. I'm speaking about putting those people around the athlete who are going to help him or her chart that journey to elite athlete status. And our federations need those kind of skill sets. Our federations need more people involved, parents, you know, the teachers, doctors, lawyers, accountants. We need the PR people. We need more people who understand the different aspects, even if they don't necessarily fully understand the sport per se. You know, we need people who are going to be able to play all of these different roles in the life of the athlete and in the development of the athlete. And so I think it's important to understand where to put that investment. It is not always necessarily at the elite level, because an elite athlete, by and large, is somebody who's going to be either professional already or heading towards professional status, and may just need that little nudge to get to professional status. So you don't necessarily need a whole lot of money being put into people who are in their 20s or you know, who are on the cusp of becoming professional. They do need some support. They do need a degree of support, but they are not going to be the main place, or that is not going to be the main place that you will want to place focus. The main place you will need to place focus is on the grassroots, on the base. And if you don't have a broad base, you're going to find yourself with only a handful of elite athletes. You're going to find yourself with only a handful of athletes who are even on the verge of making that breakthrough to elite athlete status. And that's simply not good enough. And certainly, I think there's a lot more potential. But if you don't have a broad base of, if you don't have 500 people playing basketball, then you're not going to get a really great basketball team at the national level. If you don't have 1,000 people playing football, you're not going to be able to get, a really great football team, because you don't necessarily, there's so many diamonds in the rough. There's so many people out there who may be really good, but they're just not exposed to the sport. They just don't have that kind of, they don't have that kind of environment, whether it be that they don't have the courses available, they don't have the coaching support available, then they're not the competitions available, they're not the development programs available for them in their given area. So we miss out on a lot of kids who could and should probably be at some point becoming elite athletes, but because we don't put the resources at the base, we don't have that kind of development approach. So we don't have 1,000 cricketers, and if you don't have 1,000 cricketers, you're not going to get 100 really good national cricketers. And if you don't have 100 national cricketers, you're not going to get a team of 11 elite athletes who are going out there ready to conquer the world. So grassroots investment is absolutely important. Again, it is important for governments, federations, and parents to understand what I talk about when I talk about planning. You must have that sense of what is the route from here to there. How do I take my child? How do I take my young athlete from being a club athlete or a school level athlete to becoming a professional, or to becoming a collegiate athlete, or to becoming an Olympian, or whatever the case may be, or even an Olympic champion in time to come? How do you make that move from here to there? And so you must have that team around you. And if you don't have a team, if you don't have a lot of voices, you must have voices around you. You must have a lot of people. You must have people talking to you and giving you advice and support. But it's also important to understand who is talking, and to understand which voices are most important, and to be able to prioritize those people, and to have people around you who are not necessarily always speaking the same language as you, but who understand your goals. Because it's good to have, and I say not necessarily speaking the same language as you, because sometimes it's good to have somebody who has a different idea about how to do things, and who challenges your ideas, for two reasons. One, you might not necessarily be doing it the best way, but two, just because somebody challenges the way you do things, it forces you to really look at, am I doing this the right way? And you might be doing it the right way. And if you are, it forces you to look at it a little bit more closely, examine what you're doing, examine your processes, examine your situation, and to say, listen, this is good, and this is, so you come away either with confirmation that yes, you are happy with the way you're doing things, or you come away with the knowledge that, listen, I probably could do this a little bit better, or you tweak what it is that you're doing. So it's always good to have somebody around you, to have people around you who are interrogating, who are looking at you, who are probing and trying to figure out ways of doing things better. And that's why I always say, in organizations, whether it be governments, federations, clubs even, it's always good to have a mix of voices. It's never good for everybody to be singing from the same hymn sheet, to be saying exactly the same thing. It is actually a good thing to have dissenting voices, and to have people who are going to try to make you, who have the same goals. Because if you all have the same goals, but you just have different ideas about how to get there, then eventually you're going to find common ground. You're going to find the best possible way to get what it is that you want to get done. So the ideas there's so many ideas on how to nurture talent, how to do things that really move the needle, and that help us build our young people, help us build our athletes, especially at the late teen level. And again, despite the fact that we talked about variability earlier, at the late teen level, when you're in your mid to late teens, you should not be doing 2 or 3 or 4 sports. At most, you might be doing 2 sports, but you should at that point have decided this is what I want to do, this is what I'm good at, because you are not going to be able to devote the amount of practice time and preparation time to 2 and 3 sports at a high level. So if you're a track and field athlete, you should not also be a volleyballer or a basketballer or whatever have you in your late teens, if you intend to make one of those either your profession or something that you're going to do at the collegiate level or something that you're going to do as an international competitor. It used to be the case many years ago, long before I was alive, it used to be the case that a lot of athletes in the Caribbean, I think even, up to the highest level, Garfield Sobers at one point represented Barbados in golf, I think. A number of Saint Lucia's top cricketers were also some of our top footballers, were also some of our top golfers, were also some of our top track athletes. So it was a lot more common in the 50s and 60s for somebody to be able to do 4 and 5 and 6 sports at a relatively high level. It's much more difficult these days. There are many more demands on our time, and there are many more the high level competitors out there who are trying to do the same thing that we are trying to do. And so you have to really focus, especially in your late teens to early 20s, you have to really focus on your sport of choice, your event or events of choice. You should have determined exactly, or your position of choice. You should have determined by then what it is that you want to do, what is your identity, and who it is that you want to be if you intend to compete at that elite level. You can, of course, still be a recreational athlete in multiple sports. You can go and take your little sweat in football, take your sweat in basketball, take your sweat in track and field. But you have to understand that if you are going to be elite, if you're going to be competing internationally, professionally, or even at the collegiate level in the US, UK, Australia, wherever the case may be, you are going to have to really pin down on one sport, one position, or 1 or 2 positions in some cases, and you are going to have to really drill down and understand what that thing requires of you in order for you to be able to do it at the maximum level and to really raise your potential, to raise your performance to the highest possibility that you have the potential for. And last but not least, in terms of what people around you can do, in terms of facilitating your ability to develop as an elite athlete, I think it's important to look at, it's not, for me, it's not the most important thing, but I think it is certainly important to look at the question of how we put athletes in the best possible situation for success. And that involves, for me, a number of different things. It involves coaching, absolutely, is probably the most crucial one, because coaching there's so many different aspects to coaching. It certainly involves, for me, the idea of mental support, whether we're looking at a therapist or looking at an actual qualified sports psychologist, but there has to be somebody in your corner that you're just talking to about your mental well-being, and that is looking after ensuring that you are in the best place psychologically to be able to give of your best, if not at all times, certainly most of the time. You also have to have, especially depending on the sport, but the access to facilities is important. By and large, we live on small islands, and so everything is within fairly close proximity. People in Saint Lucia complain that they have to travel an hour to go down to the stadium. I mean, if you're going to the US and you are going to a high-level sporting event, you are going to have to travel at least an hour to the stadium. If you're in the UK and you're going to a high-level sporting event, you're going to have to travel at least an hour to get to the stadium. It is, of course, not the most convenient for training, but certainly you're not going to be required to be at that particular facility 24/7 or even 3 or 4 days a week most of the time. Most events you're going to be able to do fairly comfortably in terms of the basic preparation on a grass field or on the beach or wherever. So having said that, facilities are important. In basketball, you do require a court at the very least. You need a court. You need your hoop. You need balls. Cricket is very intense in terms of its requirements vis-a-vis equipment. Volleyball, you don't really need much. You just need a net, and in some cases I've seen people just sling up a rope and they're good to go. Tennis, by and large, you would need a hard court, rackets, and rackets can be very, very expensive. Cricket gear can be very, very expensive as well. Football to some extent can be expensive, but football is a sport that you can play. Kids play at the basic level. So in terms of introduction, you can play barefoot, you can play on grass, you can play on the beach, you can play wherever. When you get to that next level, you do need that support to be able to get proper shoes, proper equipment, whether it be spikes in track and field, or proper basketball shoes, proper cricketing gear, proper pads and so on for volleyball, rackets for tennis, etc., etc. So you do need that level of support, and that brings me to my final point, which is that I did say earlier that by and large, you will not. I don't think that there is a massive ask, and that finance for me is not the most critical thing in terms of developing elite athletes. However, there are certain interventions that are required. And especially when we look at the economic situation of some of our emerging athletes, a number of our emerging athletes in the Caribbean come from rural areas, they come from poorer backgrounds, and they do need that kind of support. They do need support in terms of their academics, they do need preparation, and they do need transportation money in some cases. It can be that simple. Very often we're looking at how athletes don't have basic nutrition. I'm not even talking about supplements or anything of that nature, just basic nutrition. Some athletes come to training, and I can tell you there was one guy, he actually broke the national record in the 100 meters when he eventually went to school. And this guy used to come to training, and after a while I realized that this guy was always looking fatigued and something off about him. And I asked him one day what was going on, and he said that he hadn't eaten. I said, is that what is always the case with you? And he said, yeah, he always comes to training and he hasn't eaten. I said, but why haven't you eaten? He said he doesn't have anything to eat, and his parents were just unable to provide for him, and there wasn't a system to provide that support, to give him that support, just to be able to get a meal. And so he would come to training hungry. And so we just set up a simple system for him to be able to eat every day. And it transformed him, and that was a very simple intervention, but it is not, unfortunately, it is not an uncommon need. We have a lot of young athletes who have a lot of potential, but whether it is their discipline, whether it is their nutritional situation, whether it is transport situation, whether it is their inability to just buy a pair of shoes, they are never going to be able to move on to becoming even a successful school athlete. They have potential, but they're just never going to be able to fully participate just because they are unable to afford to do so. And so that does become one of those things that we do have to look at, and it becomes one of those things that forms part of that pathway to success. And it is one of those things that we certainly have to plan for at a much higher level than we are doing at present. So that, for me, in a nutshell, encapsulates the steps or the paths that I think that we have to take, the road that we have to take in order to develop elite athletes. And I welcome any questions that you may have. No questions? I love it. Hi, Dania.
How are you, Terry?
Good, thanks. And how are you?
Good. I'm good. First time we actually get to see each other in person. Sorry, it has to be over Zoom.
After talking for over a decade
years.
now.
Oh yes, for sure.
Yeah, we just had a little power trip, so it's incredibly hot in here now.
Oh, okay.
And I'm actually on my phone because the computer went down, the internet went down. So
Okay.
I'm just doing my best with my phone for the time being. And nobody has any questions. Bernard, Jermaine, Damari, Cornelius. Not a question, not a comment. Nothing in the chat. Good evening. Marsha, I hope the group wasn't this quiet when you were on. Good evening.
Good evening. I just joined.
Now, man, the floodgates open, man. Hey,
I
Jimmy.
just joined, Terry. I only just saw the link and I thought it would be interesting to see what's going on. I don't really have much of a background except I just read the flyer. So one thing I'll probably just pop in is with respect to the sports academy that was recently established. What do you think? I mean, I don't know if you know anything about it. Do you think it's something that is going to achieve the outcomes, the weight setup? Are there improvements to be made? What's your thoughts on that?
The outcome, and when you say the outcome, you're talking specifically about developing elite athletes?
Yeah, I think that was the spirit in which it was done to.
That is the fundamental issue that we never really got a sense of, and I shouldn't say a sense, we never had a proper understanding of what it is that the sports academy, what are the outcomes that are intended from the sports academy. But let us confine the conversation to what we're discussing today. So if we're saying someone who performs, we're looking at somebody who performs at a relatively high level in his or her chosen sport and performs at an international level, an international senior level in particular. And you look at the sports academy. First of all, we have two sports at the academy, pretty much, cricket and football.
Athletics, no?
Athletics is kind of shoehorned in there, and again, I guess part of the planning of it all. But they have athletics, but athletics is kind of like a legacy from Grosley, from when it was Grosley Secondary. The short answer is, in and of itself, no. I don't think the sports academy in and of itself is designed for that. And part of the reason for that is that the sports academy is not in a vacuum. The sports academy cannot do the task, or fully do the task of developing an elite athlete. In that, it does not give the athlete a competitive situation, a competitive development situation. It does not, I don't think they're capturing student athletes at the right time for that kind of intervention. I think you want to do that kind of intervention at the age where virtually when they're leaving school. So when you're leaving secondary school at the age of 16 under universal secondary education, when most kids are leaving secondary school, at a 16-year-old is the kind of person, or is the kind of age group where you want to be starting to groom at in a more precise way, or at a higher level. You want to start grooming those athletes to be ready to become elite athletes. And the other aspect of the sports academy is that very often you see a lot of our top athletes. I mean, you look at, right now, you look at the top women sprinters on the planet, the persons of Shelly Ann Fraser-Price and Elaine Thompson-Hera. Neither of them was an elite junior athlete. They were junior athletes, so they were exposed at that level. They had that kind of development, and they had people who saw their potential at 18, 19 years old, whatever the case may be. But they were not, world-class junior athletes. And in fact, there's a lot of conversation happening right now in athletics about the record of transitioning junior world champions and junior world medalists to the senior ranks, because most of them, you'd be surprised at the numbers. I think it's something like 20% or something like that of world junior medalists who go on to become elite athletes at the senior level, which is 20 plus.
So Terry, if I may just be a little more direct, because I don't want to hog the program. And based on what I hear you saying is the sports academy by itself is not enough to achieve the goal that the people who envisioned it have in mind. And I think
I don't know the goals that they had.
Right, but I suspect though, the intention was to create a facility that would cater to those young people who really had sports first and foremost in their plans for their future, whether it be as competitive athletes or as persons involved in sports therapy, the whole range, management and what have you, events management, etc., which is fine. But I often think a lot of the things we lack critical mass. And so in the best of intentions, it's very difficult to pull these things off when you don't have the competitive advantage, you don't have the numbers, and that's a problem. So one other view, or an option would be that a facility like that might be best fitted for preparation of athletes and teams for competition, which is something that is more time defined and it's more specific, short to medium term, that you can see achievables, deliverables, in a more practical way. So that's what I want to get to.
Yeah, that's fair. So I would agree with that. But I also think that if you are going to do an academy of that nature, that it really ought to be geared more towards kids who are getting ready to leave school and who are in that 16, that late teen cohort, as opposed to 11-year-olds. I mean, an 11-year-old could not be preparing for for doing one sport. An 11-year-old should not be focusing on one sport for the rest of their life, or thinking about creating, and you should not be singling out or picking out the top 15 or 20 11-year-olds and assume that, hey, these are going to be the best kids for the rest of their lives. One kid might stay short for his entire life and never turn out to be or slow for the rest of his life. He may be good at his level at 11 years old, but never move up. And then you might lose a lot of kids, as I gave the example there of Shelly-Ann and Elaine. You're going to lose a lot of kids because they figure, hey, I'm not in the sports academy, therefore I'm not a top 20 footballer, I'm not a top 20 cricketer, therefore I'm not good enough to be at the sports academy. I'm never going to be good enough, and that's it for me. So I'm going to get out of this thing, and you've suddenly lost a really outstanding athlete or potential athlete because your scope was just too narrow. But thanks for that, Jimmy.
Agreed. Thanks.
Any other questions? Any other comments? Feedback?
Well, I just Rural Branga here. Actually in Jamaica. Just wanted to, it's really comment. I like to comment on everything you said. It's like you're talking about Jamaica. We really need the corporate entities to get on board, even with the sports academy. Shelly-Ann Fraser, I met her as a student. She came to my office as a work experience student. And, that girl kept saying, you're going to see me in the Olympics one day. She never really got the support. She just ran her way into the hearts of people here in Jamaica. And there were other Shelly-Ann Frasers out there without the drive that she had. And like you said, if we don't capture them at that transition from secondary school, I'm actually in swimming. Right? I'm a national swim coach. And like you said, we don't have the high numbers like America. We only have Ali Atkins. America have over 700,000 swimmers to choose from. And just see the quality of their program and their whole collegiate system. There's none like it anywhere else in the world. And the reason that was created like that is because they want to be the best in the world. Until we start to develop those kind of thinking and put funding into it, the academy of which you speak, something like that in all of the Caribbean islands, then, we are going to have a number of persons that fall by the way. But Good message. I came in late, but all that I heard sounded like you were talking about Jamaica, and we really need to get those facilities and funding. You know, like the young man with the meal, a simple thing, a simple banana could have helped him, you know, come to train a little better. But good presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Terry?
Yes, sir.
Wanted to commend you on this initiative. Like Jermaine, I kind of saw it late and I just popped in to see what was going on. And I wanted to commend you for this and agree with the comment that you made and Jermaine made about the sports academy, that it wasn't properly explained or properly thought out. But that's for another discussion, as you suggested. And I caught the tail end of your presentation. And what I wanted to focus a little bit on is the point that you were making about athletes or students who come from deprived communities who probably have an interest, but circumstances are kind of preventing them from giving the best. And I think that's where we need major interventions, because we're missing out quite a bit on a few athletes who have talent and potential, who miss out on an opportunity because they probably have challenges at home. Parents are obviously distracted with other priorities, and so they can't get the attention that they need, the investment that they need in the sport. And I think either state intervention or some kind of corporate intervention needed to help those athletes who come from deprived communities. I think capturing the tail end of your presentation, I think that was what stood out for me, and I think that's one of the areas that we need to focus on to make sure we capture a wider pool of athletes and sports personalities. But commendations on this initiative.
Thanks much. One of the things that I just want to touch on really quickly, and it's a drum that I've been beating for a very long time, is that we really need to do a lot better in terms of ingraining our girls into sports and introducing our girls to sport. You look at the primary school level, and we have at a serious, in a serious structured way, we have football, we have cricket, we have track and field. I think that's probably about it. But we don't have any of those sports for girls at the primary school level. Girls are allowed to play with the boys if they so desire, but I mean, we really need, and as I said, I mean, it's something that I've been harping on for a while. I actually used to work with the Saint Lucia women's cricket team way back when Verena Finisterre was West Indies women's captain. And it was, I always proposed to them, I said, listen, you guys aren't exactly the youngest. I think it's one of the things that we need to look at is probably getting some of you into the secondary schools as mentors, something that unfortunately never materialized. I think if Leslie Collymore were here, he would recognize exactly what it is that I'm talking about, because I have made the same suggestion for women's basketball, that we need to get mentors and we need to start getting competition going, especially for our girls at the primary school level in basketball. And it doesn't, and when I say competition, participation, I should say participation. We need to have a much broader pool of participation. We need to have a much broader pool of exposure to the fundamentals of those sports: cricket, football, swimming. I mean, in swimming, we talk about, and we've heard the Swimming Federation, for instance, has put plans on the table time and again. Government has from time to time agreed you need to have pool facilities in different communities. It may be as simple as putting a pool in the south, putting a pool in the west, putting a pool in the east, community pools, 4 lanes, 25 meters, some degree of controlled access, but public community pools that you can develop some coaches, you can get coaches into those pools, and you can make things happen. So you can start developing swimmers, and you can start doing more learn to swim as a basic, swim to survive, swim for life. You know, you can start broadening your pool of swimmers. We look at our schools competition, and our schools competition in swimming is basically Bonte, Montessori, Dame Paulette, Louise Primary, and that's it. I think Plainview has won once, and Plainview is down in the south of the island for the non-Saint Lucians in the room. But by and large, it's been a handful of schools with large school populations and with ready access to the pool for them to be able to go and practice and be able to learn. And if you don't have those facilities at some basic level available to you, then you cannot think about really developing that critical mass that Jermaine spoke about and really taking the sport up to the next level. You must have the numbers, you must have the exposure at the base, and you must have a broad pool of people that you can choose from and that can help you grow. Chanel, I think we probably...
I think we have a hand up. Mr. Henry, would you like to go?
Yes, indeed. Good evening, colleagues. I first off will apologize because I only just joined. I didn't realize this Zoom meeting was on until moments ago, but I could join because this is a very important topic. So warm greetings to everyone, and I believe the discussion here is very important in terms of harnessing, developing collaboration and working towards getting certain things done as far as the elite athlete program is concerned in all the disciplines. And I heard Terry mention the business in terms of having in the schools programs that are going to bring out the athletes from that early age. And so, Terry, I think that's very important that you hit on that. And I just wanted to bring to the attention of the meeting that there actually is a pilot program that was introduced into 2 countries in the region, ourselves, Saint Lucia, and I think it's 10 Kitts. And it's a pilot program for development of cricket in the age range in schools from 9 to 13. As it happens, the finals, the pilot program lasted for approximately 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. And there were some preliminary games. The whole concept was it was called 5-5-5. Then it was sponsored by Republic Bank. And interestingly, Republic Bank, bought out Scotiabank. And then you may or may not know that Scotiabank also had the kiddie cricket program going on for a number of years throughout the region. And I happen to have been the country champion for that program here in Saint Lucia. And then they stopped sponsorship, so it kind of fell away. But then the institution that bought out, the financial institution that bought over Scotiabank here in Saint Lucia, Republic Bank, are interested in we had the pilot program. As I said, it was about 2 to 3 weeks duration. There were 5 zones in Saint Lucia that took part in it from various schools, and that included both boys and Finisterre. So to your point, I just wanted to point out that there is something happening, at least at that level, where both boys and girls are included, or at least the ladies, the girls are included in it. The finals happened yesterday at Darren Sammy Cricket Ground, and I was there for it, although I got there very based on a meet because of the meeting.
I had known that. I'd have definitely popped across.
Yeah, well, let me just add that, Republic Bank asked that it not be highlighted too much. I don't know if I'm going to put myself in trouble by saying that, but they didn't want too much of they didn't want it in the limelight too much. I think because of the COVID challenges that we have in the region. Okay, so it was sort of scaled down in that sense, and I guess because it also was a pilot program too, they didn't want it to be they didn't want too much visibility in that way yet. Okay, but at least we have that coming on, and there's interest. We as the umbrella organization, I mean Saint Lucia National Cricket Association, we are going to seize on that and try and keep that momentum going so that it happens, there's continuum, there's, it's going to be repeated, and that's the plan. So I just wanted to share that with the meeting, that there is something in the offing as far as cricket for the ladies from that early age goes.
I've seen, and I think it was noted in the Saint Lucia cricket group a couple of months ago when this programs. I think this is a continuation of the program that you had done during school time, right, Carol?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And
yes.
somebody, one individual noted it, and then everybody kind of joined in. But it was fantastic. I mean, I park and walk to work, and it was just fantastic, just seeing girls walking around with a bat under their arm.
Oh, yeah.
And they just walking around. They've got their school bag, they in their uniform, and they just have a bat. They just have a bat on their shoulders, and it was just fantastic, just seeing children that age,
Yes.
just walking around with their bats.
Exactly the
You
feeling
go around on a Corin Marisil on a weekend, and you just see these kids with their kit bags and so on walking around, boys and girls, and it is fantastic. And that is exactly the kind of spirit that we need to be able to build up numbers, to be able to build up, and we need people not just as, in order for us to have elite athletes, we must have a lot of participatory athletes. We must have a lot of people who just keen on the sport. You just need to have people who are interested in the sport, who love the sport, who know a little bit about it. So when they watch Akeem Ogis goes out to play for West Indies in the 19s as captain, when they're watching Akeem Ogis, they're not just watching because he's a solution. They're watching because they like cricket, because they're into cricket. They want to know, they understand a little something about what he's doing and what he's going through, and that all contributes to the conversation around the sport and really uplifting it.
And not only that, Terry, Akeem Ogis, the Akeem Ogis story is one which there is the genesis of that story is really going back all the way to his formative years. I mean, from a very small kid, his parents had him involved in cricket. You understand? So, to your point, and now we're talking about elite athlete program. You want the kids from that age to be involved, to be exposed, to rub shoulders, to have the opportunities from that age. And what that does is that it helps them cement themselves, get grounding from that early age, whether it be male or female, and that helps a lot. And the same thing applies to anything you want to talk about, music. When you have kids involved in music from that early age, from 5, 6, it does a lot in terms of how far they are going to go and where they will end up, So that's very important that, we try and harness and we try and build a pool of, both boys and girls involved in cricket from the primary school level, because the institutions are there, the sources are there. I mean, in COVID times, there's challenges with getting sponsorship. We know those challenges exist, but amidst all the challenges, there are opportunities, and we just have to work hard, to try and find them. And once we find them, make the most, make the best of it. So, along with that, other things have to happen. Your coaches, you want to build and grow your coach pool, your coaching pool, so that they exist in schools. Ensure they've started the various certifications that they need to get. The first aid, the child rights, the foundation course levels and whatnot. And I could just mention last year, we had like 18 young ladies in Saint Lucia become certified in foundational coaching course, which is very, very good. That was done virtually as opposed to face-to-face. And there are plans by Cricket West Indies to continue doing that, so that you can go all the way up to level 1, level 2, and level 3. Although level 3 will involve some face-to-face. I don't want to take up too much time, but I'm happy at least to have joined and be part of the discussion. And I'm willing and ready to be more involved, as long as we can continue to collaborate and see how far we can take these initiatives.
Absolutely, great to have you. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. And that's pretty much my time. Unless we have any further questions, I don't think we do. So I can probably hand back to Chanel, who will take us over to somebody who I know is very knowledgeable on the question of elite athletes, being one herself, and now raising a couple as well. Thanks a lot, Chanel, for inviting me and having me be part of this. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Finisterre. I hope you stay tuned for the remainder of the session. So up next, we have Mrs. Dania Laforce. So a little about Mrs. Laforce. A two-time Coach of the Year, Dania Laforce is in her first season as an assistant coach for the Adelante Dream of the Women's National Basketball Association. She previously served as an advanced scout/volunteer coach for the Connecticut Sun during the historic 2019 season, where the team advanced to the WNBA Finals for the first time since 2005. Prior to joining the professional ranks, Coach Laforce spent more than 2 decades as a collegiate basketball coach in 5 different conferences: Atlanta 10, Colonial Athletic Association, New York Collegiate Athletic Conference, Big East, and Northeast Conference. Most recently, she served as the head coach at Division I University of Rhode Island, where she was the university's first minority woman head coach in any sport. At the university, she is the winningest coach in the first 2 seasons in the program's history with a record 29 wins. Under her leadership, the team also won the program's first Ocean State Tournament championship. Other than being a top-of-the-line coach, Coach Laforce is the mother of both Terrence and Martin Mann. Terrence is in his 2nd year with the Los Angeles Clippers of the National Basketball Association, making Coach Laforce the only WNBA coach with a son playing in the NBA. Martin is a senior at Pace University, where he is a member of the men's basketball team. So over to you, Miss Mann, Mrs. Laforce. Sorry.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you guys. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with your audience, Chanel. I really appreciate, always reaching back and talking to my people in the Caribbean about my process to becoming a women's basketball coach. This is something that has been a very special part of my life. I always say being a coach is not a job. It's really part of my DNA, and it's a lifestyle. It's not something I turn off or could work a 9 to 5 with and go about other aspects of my life. It's something that really has defined me and developed me into the person that I am today. And that's pretty much what sports does. It really has an impact on the overall life and health sometimes of the athlete. And so I never really took that for granted. It has just been something that has really allowed me to travel around the world, meet great people, and influence a lot of lives. I pride myself on being a coach who's a good role model. I'm a mom of 2. I have played collegiate basketball at the highest level. I was a member of the Georgetown women's basketball program, which is part of the Big East Conference, a very, very competitive conference in the country. I have really touched a lot of lives, touched a lot of young women who were part of my teams as, when I was an assistant coach as well as when I was a head coach. So I really take pride in being a coach mentor for my players. It's something that's really, really important to me. I really pride myself on not only dealing with the physical athlete, but also the mental athlete. I think sports has a way to really develop a lot of life skills and a lot of skills that I think an athlete is going to need in every realm, every part of their life. Work ethic, teamwork, handling losses and handling success. At a young age, I think athletes are taught these type of life skills through the sport. And it's something that I'm very proud to be a part of. A little bit about my upbringing. I was born in Saint Lucia in Mondidor. And I left the island when I was 5 years old. My mom had already traveled to America and left me at the age of 2. And I lived with my grandmother and my aunts and my uncles in a small house in Wnba. It was about 8 of us in the house. So I come from very, very humble beginnings, being raised by my grandmother and my aunts and my uncles, and lived with my cousins. My mom sent for me when I was 5. She was already in New York and had established herself and felt it was the right time for me to come over from Saint Lucia and join her. So I came and I saw my mom working 2 jobs, as most Caribbean people do when they come to the United States, and not shy about working hard and developing a living for their family. She worked 2 jobs. She went to school even at night. So from a very early age, I had a good role model on how to work hard and the things that you need to do in life to be successful. My mom was just an example of that. I really wasn't introduced to the sport until I was about 11 years old, I would say. And it happened because I was a Girl Scout. Girl Scout was something my mom thought would be good for me. Obviously, I'm an only child. So she put me in a lot of activities and a lot of programs to have me meet friends and be with friends, because I obviously was always alone. So I was graduating from my Girl Scout level, moving up to the next level. And I was always the tallest of in my age, or all my friends, I was always the tallest. And my Girl Scout leader, her sister happened to be a local basketball coach. So her sister says to her, "Hey, who's this tall girl in your troop? Does she play basketball?" And my troop leader said, "No, she doesn't play basketball at all." So she approached me at the end of the graduation and said, "Hey, what do you think about playing basketball?" Now, at the time, I had no idea what basketball was. My only experience with basketball is watching my father watch the Georgetown Hoyas men's team. And at that time, the Georgetown Hoyas men's team was very, very successful, had been to several Final Fours, and was just the epitome of college men's basketball at the time. But I didn't really watch the game to learn the game. I was just watching the game to spend time with my father. And I, had no idea what the game of basketball was all about. I just knew about the jump ball, because that was a part of the game that I really paid attention to after I zoned off and started running around and doing other things. So I went to the practice, and yes, I was the tallest at the practice. I was very, very excited about playing defense, because at my height, that's the one thing I was really, really good at. I could block shots, I could defend. So I fell in love with the game of basketball simply because of my defensive ability. My offensive skills was a mess. I could not shoot, I could not dribble, I could not pass, I couldn't do a lot of things. And I really had to learn those things. I really had to apply the hard work and the work ethic that I witnessed my mom do on a daily basis to the sport, because I really wanted to be good at it. I wanted to be good at it to impress my father, who was a big basketball fan. So I really worked hard at the game of basketball. I was a student of the game. I watched, when I did watch games from then on, it was a different level of focus. I was watching more to learn the sport and learn how to be an elite athlete in the sport of basketball. So, that's pretty much my beginning of basketball, just really being more of a dedicated, committed athlete than a talented athlete from the onset. My talent did get better. I think it had a lot to do with my passion for the game, my commitment to the game, my willingness to learn the game, and be humble with the things that I was not really good at, but put in the time to get better, such as shooting and passing and dribbling. Fortunately, my coach at the time, who was also the sister of my Girl Scout leader, she moved on from the level she was coaching us at to become a high school basketball coach. And she asked me, at the time I was ready for high school, she asked me, "Hey, would you mind coming to play for me at this high school?" Now, this high school was clearly across town. It was actually in an all-white neighborhood. And, I was kind of hesitant at the time. I grew up in a neighborhood that was primarily Black. And, I wasn't sure how I would fit in going to this high school, an all-white, all-girls high school. But I took the chance, the leap of faith, and went to play for my coach at the high school. I had a great high school career. She taught me the game. She taught me so much. And one thing I learned from my coach, and this is something athletes you can do, and coaches, you're responsible for. I learned to be passionate about the game, because my coach was so very passionate about the game. and she was very, very competitive, very, very competitive. So she taught me to have that passion for the game. She taught me how to be competitive and how to handle losses and as well as wins. I mean, that's something that's very, very important for athletes to understand, how to, embrace the losses and really learn and celebrate your successes. So Kathy, who was my coach, was just great. Really, she taught me the game, taught me how to be an elite athlete. And the one thing I learned from my coach at the time was that you have to really develop the mental part of your game as well as the physical part of your game. You have to really be tough-minded. You have to really be able to get knocked down and pick yourself back up and continue fighting. You have to be able to lose a game and go home and think about your role, how your role played in that loss, and be willing to come back the next day and get better. Not only from a player's perspective, but from a coach's perspective, the mental part of the game is so very important. You're responsible to coach up your players. You're responsible to make them feel that they're better than what they may think they are at the time. And she did that. She poured so much knowledge in me mentally. She really got my mental game very strong. I was very, very competitive. I was very, very tough-minded. She not only was my basketball coach, but she also became a role model to me. And that's the first time I realized that as a coach, you have a responsibility to be a role model to your athletes. She would have us over to our house for dinners. We constantly hung out as a team, and that bonding really allowed us to have a very, very successful high school season, a high school career. We won several state championships. We were very, very close as a team. My teammates were like my sisters. Again, I'm an only child, so I was able to be around, like-minded athletes who I felt was an extension of my family. I loved going to practice to be around my sisters. I loved playing for my coach. And that was my first experience of how a coach should be and how a coach should treat their athletes. Really be responsible for the mental part as well as the physical part of the game, but also be a great role model, understand the influence that you have and the impact that you have in their lives. So I was fortunate to get a Division I scholarship to Georgetown University, which is a very, very high academic institution here in Washington, D.C. And I received a basketball scholarship, came in and played for a very good coach at the time. And again, had 14 other sisters that became part of my family. We still talk to today. Actually, we're in a group chat, laughing about, some of the things we went through in college. Sports became my extended family, a sisterhood, people that you're deep in the trenches with, that you're battling with, that you're competing with. We were very, very successful my sophomore year in college. We actually won the Big East. We were co-Big East champions. And then my junior year, we made it to the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament. And that was, one of the biggest success stories of the women's basketball program at Georgetown. The men obviously had a lot more success than the women, but we were able to put ourselves on the map during our run to the Sweet 16. So just very fond memories of competing with great sisters, very fond memories of getting better, very fond memories of losing and having to pick myself back up and show up the next day and be an elite athlete. That mental preparation allowed me to really succeed in a lot of areas in my life that I may feel are failures, but my mental capacity to handle those situations has really allowed me to kind of thrive through those situations and come out ahead, come out as a winner. After college, I started coaching women's basketball right away. Like I said, coaching for me was that impact that my high school coach played in my life. I just knew coming out of college that I wanted to be a college coach. I wanted to have that same influence on young players. I wanted to be a role model. I wanted to be responsible for not only their physical development, but also their mental development. I wanted to teach them time management skills. I wanted to teach them work ethic. I wanted to teach them teamwork. I wanted to teach them skills that I believe can make them successful at any part of their lives. So I wanted to be responsible for that. I started coaching right away. As soon as I graduated Georgetown, I became a graduate assistant coach at Long Island University in downtown Brooklyn, which is obviously where I'm from. So I had a chance to go back home, back to Brooklyn after I graduated college. I was a graduate assistant coach, and a graduate assistant coach means you're getting your graduate degree. The program is paying for you to receive your graduate degree, but you're also coaching. You have coaching responsibilities. And at the time, as a graduate assistant coach, you're doing a lot. You're doing laundry, you're doing study halls, you're you're coaching the kids, you're doing scout reports, you're doing a lot of things, and have a lot of responsibility. But I embraced it all. I was just so passionate about the game and passionate about my role that I embraced it all. Fortunately, God blessed me with my first son during the year that I was a graduate assistant coach. Terrence was born in 1996, and I started coaching in 1996. So I was also thrown into motherhood at a very young age, and had to balance being a mother and being a coach and having so many coaching responsibilities at the time. 20 Martin comes this world, and here I am, a young mother. But you know what? All the lessons that I have learned through the sport and the game of basketball allow me to just succeed at both, being a mother and being a coach. I rose up the ranks of coaching from a graduate assistant coach to a restricted earnings coach to finally an assistant coach. I was an assistant coach for 10 years. And my sons are pretty much born and raised on the court. I gave birth to my sons, and maybe about a month or two after, I was back in the gym, and they had an opportunity to travel with me. They had an opportunity to come to practices. They really embraced, my team embraced my kids. They were like my lifetime babysitters, and so you could just imagine at a young age being in the gym all the time and watching your mother on the sidelines and really getting a different view of the game of basketball. And I think that's why my sons are so successful at the game is because they were exposed to the game, not like a lot of children are exposed to the sport. And, sometimes coming to practice is quality time with mom. Sometimes watching game film at night is quality time with mom. Sometimes traveling and sitting on the back of the bus is quality time with mom. So, basketball became our family. It became our language of love with my relationships with my children. And it was just a phenomenal thing. The sport has never let me down. The sport has really allowed me to be a great mother, a great wife, a great friend, a great teammate. So many things that the sport has allowed me to do really define who I am as a woman and as a mother. So that was pretty much my coaching journey. Obviously, assistant coach for 10 years. And then I got my first head coaching opportunity at a Division II school in Connecticut. From there, I got another coaching opportunity at Northeastern University, where we won the CAA, and I became the coach of the year. And then my final college head coaching opportunity was at the University of Rhode Island. And at that point, that was about 2, maybe 3 years ago that I stopped coaching. And for 2 years, I was not coaching. Obviously, 1 year was the year after I left URI, and then the last year, which was COVID year, nobody really was doing much with the sports. Everything pretty much had shut down. I was fortunate to get a call to coach at the WNBA level. It was something that I was very passionate about. Something I felt after college, it was the next step for me to be a professional coach. And I was so excited about working with young women, and I mean, I think the oldest age of one of my players is 37. So these are women that I'm coaching now. These are women with responsibilities, with children, with, all these, all the things that life throw at you. These women are going through that as well as being professional basketball players. I was so excited to work with professional basketball players. I was so excited to continue my role of being a mentor to them and really helping them through their life lessons. And it was different from college. College basketball coaches, players, they're concerned with their academics. They're concerned with their, work balancing being an athlete and a regular student. Whereas working with professional women now, they have other real life issues that they have to balance, as well as show up every day and be an elite athlete. So that's what brought me to the WNBA, Adelante dream. Obviously, just going through my first season as an assistant coach, and we're not doing too well. We're a little bit on a losing streak. However, the process is still fun. It's still fun being with these women. It's still fun working through our mistakes. It's still fun, just teaching them how to be better and how to finish games stronger so we could add more wins to our overall season. So that's the story. The story of my WNBA path is still unwritten, but it's a process that's very fun. It's a process that allows me to be who I am, my true nature. And it's just fun. It's just fun to coach. It's fun to be responsible for players' physical and mental growth, no matter what age. And I'm so blessed and excited to have this opportunity to continue coaching. So that's just I guess the long version of my journey. I hope you guys got a little bit of, from a player's perspective. I know we have players that are on the call. I know we have coaches that are on the call as well as parents on the call. I hope I was able to give you a little nugget, something that you could really tuck away to help you on your journey to being an elite athlete or training elite athletes or being a parent of an elite athlete. I think from a parent's perspective, just being supportive of your children and their path, being patient with their process. I know patients can be a little overbearing and want the success so badly for their children that they tend to kind of cloud their judgment, cloud their patience with their own individual process. So I just want to encourage parents out there who are on the call to remain supportive of your child, encourage them to continue the process of getting better and be patient. Be patient with them. Let them go through their ups and their downs. Just be supportive. Be more of a cheerleader than a coach. Let their coaches coach and allow them just to grow within their sport. So that's pretty much it. I just wanted to have this conversation, just talk to you guys really about my journey instead of having a presentation, on what I think should be done. I think my story is a great story. I think I'm a living example of hard work, a living example of coming from humble beginnings and really making a way in a foreign land. I think I'm a great example of balancing work and life, being a mother, being a coach, and continuing to be successful. And, just an example of being a role model and understanding that coaching is not always about the X's and O's. It's not always about the performance. Sometimes it's just about being there for your athletes. It's about being supportive. It's about coaching them up and helping them be better citizens, better mothers, better, workers for whatever realm or opportunity they have after you. You're responsible for their growth. So that's all I have. I want to, obviously open it up for questions, comments. If there's any other part of my journey that you want to hear a little bit more about, I'll be definitely willing to share some more. So I'll just open it up for you guys instead of continuing to ramble on.
I have a question if no one is going as yet. How does it feel being known as Terrence Mann's mother as opposed to Mrs. Dania Laforce?
Yeah. Well, I really had to get used to it, and it really has happened over the last 2 years. Getting used to his notoriety and his success. But it's something we dreamed about. It's something we prayed on. It's something that we always felt was possible. So to be in this position now, it feels real. It feels normal. It feels like it's supposed to happen this way. Terrence is a very, very humble young man. He doesn't really like the limelight. He doesn't really like the notoriety that he's received. And I told him, well, that's what you get when you score 39 points and beat the Utah Jazz to send the Clippers to the Western Conference Finals for the first time in a very long time. Come to the territory, right? So he has to learn to kind of deal with that celebrity status that he's receiving and understand at the end of the day, it's a gift from God. It's a position that not a lot of young men are in. And he has to embrace it, and I embrace it. I love being known as Terrence Mann's mom. His father is Eustace Mann. He's also from Saint Lucia. He grew up in Guapatat, and so that's where the man comes in. Eustace Mann, and obviously we were married, divorced now, but he's still a very influential part of his son's lives. And I just love being Terrence Mann's mom. It gives me another feather in my cap to add to it. And as a mother, you're always proud of your children, no matter what happens, no matter what level they because Martin is a Division II basketball player. So I'm just as proud as Martin as I am of Terrence, and I just love being their mom.
Perfect answer, I would say. Does anyone else have a question or a comment? Oh, there's one.
If I may, Dania,
Yes.
one of the things I spoke about was exposure to different sports. Talk to me a little bit about what the boys were like growing up. I mean, I know obviously they were exposed to basketball through you, but surely that wasn't the only thing that they would have done as boys.
Definitely. At a young age, I didn't know basketball would be their primary sport, of course. And we're just so fortunate in the States to have access to different sports at a young age. The boys played soccer, they played baseball, and they played basketball. Terrence was a very, very good soccer player. Obviously, his dad played soccer, and he excelled in that sport as well. But from a very, very young age, they were exposed to every sport because I just did not know which one they'd land on and continue to want to do at the collegiate level. So I just think sports are so very important at a young age for several reasons that I mentioned. Not only does it provides friendship, lifelong friendships for athletes, but it also in the States, for me, having two young boys, it kept them off the streets. They after school programs would always revolved around sports, whether it was soccer practice, baseball practice, basketball practice. They didn't have time to be on the streets. And on the streets as a Black male is not a great place in America for any young man to be. So it just kept them kind of grounded. It kept them in areas where they were safe, that they had great friends. They were monitored, successfully by their coaches. And by the time they got home from their practices, they were so tired, they didn't even have time to want to run the streets and get into things that they shouldn't get into at their age. So, I just think if you can expose your children to all sports, each sport has a different tool that the child can learn, along with a lot of consistencies. But for me, sports was it was so very important in my life growing up. From the age of 11, that I wanted my children to have that same opportunity to learn about life through the game of sports and travel the world because of the sport, and to have great friends because of the sport and great mentors because of the sport. So, I think young people who are not involved in sports, and I'm talking tennis, soccer, baseball, basketball, you name it, swimming, it's really, it could really hurt their development. It really is something that is so valuable to a young player that it should be mandatory. It should be something that's just necessary and encouraged and promoted. I heard you talk a little bit about the funding and the facilities. I mean, that's key. You don't want to constantly have to, when you know how important sports is, and Terry, this, and a lot of coaches on the call know this, you want to expose athletes to the importance of a sport and the impact it can make in their lives. And you want it to be fairly easy. You want to have funding for great facilities, funding for uniforms, for great, for equipment, funding for transportation. It's so very important. I mean, in the States, it's a little easier because I think the United States has done a great job in understanding how important sports is in the lives of young children, other young children. I think it's a detriment to, a child if they're not exposed to the values that the sport can teach them. And funding is very important. Facilities is very important. You want to make sure that they're competing on great fields, on great courts, in facilities that are safe and free from injuries. I mean, all that's so very important, but it's definitely something that I think all children should be exposed to, and it doesn't matter what sport. I just think it's just valuable lessons that can be learned from competing and being passionate about sports.
One other question for me, Dania, and this kind of pertains to your journey. I'm sure you would know, and I'm sure there are probably a few people I know. There was a gentleman from St. Vincent and the Grenadines on the call a little while ago.
Okay.
Several Vincentian women went on to become collegiate and even professional basketballers with very little prior exposure to basketball. St. Lucia, yourself included, has had probably about a half dozen at least women, getting involved in basketball at a very serious level. How important is it for us to be able to really just expand the scope of available opportunities for our young people, and to be able to find more Dania Laforce, Dania Laforce is like Dania forces out there, and develop, just find more scope for developing our young people beyond the traditional sports and just mainly male centered sport.
Right. Well, I think the younger you can get athletes exposed to sports, the more chances that you're going to find these elite players. I think the passion is ingrained from a very, very young age. And for me, basketball became a passion because it allowed me to be with friends. Being an only child, I was always with my friends at practice. My team became an extension of my family. It was always a good feeling being around my teammates. So the reason why I was passionate about basketball was to me, it was an extension of my family. So I think if you expose athletes to sports at a very young age, they're going to attach some sort of feeling to being in that sport. And hopefully that feeling becomes a passion. And if they're passionate about it, then they're working on their skills. They're in the gym all the time. They're training all the time. You're not forcing them to do so. They want to do so because it's an emotional attachment to that sport for whatever reason. And then, if they're training all the time and they're committed and dedicated and working on their craft, that's how elite athletes are developed. And that's how they become collegiate athletes or they become professional athletes, is because of all the time that they put in working on their craft at a very young age. So I think finding them later on is definitely a good thing. And obviously it's because of lack of exposure to the sport, but we could find so many more athletes coming out of the Caribbean, than we do right now. And sometimes when you come out late, it puts us behind. It puts us behind other athletes who were exposed to the sport at a very young age. So our ability to be successful at the collegiate level or the professional level sometimes it takes a little longer because we are now understanding what it takes to compete at that level. We're now understanding the commitment to practicing, the commitment to training that you're going to need to become a very successful collegiate or professional athlete. We're now getting exposed to those intangibles that the Americans or the younger kids who've been playing sports for a long time understand those intangibles. We up Sophia Young is one from Baylor, and there's just so many out there. But like I said, I think if we start in the Caribbean with training our kids to embrace the sport, to embrace the process of becoming a successful athlete, and develop that passion and commitment for the sport, we can get a lot more of us out here at these national levels. And for me, being a coach and a recruiter, when I was recruiting for my college programs, I'm fighting with, like 300 other Division I programs for athletes. So I would love to go to the Caribbean and recruit in the Caribbean, or go overseas to Europe and recruit there. Like, those are the places where we're going to continue to go and look to find players. And, you're giving your athletes an opportunity to get a full Division I scholarship, a Division II scholarship, get their college education paid for. That's something, as a parent and as a coach, you should be training your kids for those opportunities. College coaches would love to go to St. Vincent and recruit, would love to go to St. Lucia and recruit, would love to go to Barbados, or love to go. I mean, there are athletes everywhere. And I honestly feel that when it comes to athleticism and being true athletes, the Caribbean has the most dynamic athletes. You look at the Jamaicans, winning their races in the Olympics. You look at, just so many different sports where, cricket, soccer, where we represent, we're athletic at. So could you imagine if basketball was brought to that level of training? Could you imagine if, swimming or all the other sports were brought to that level of training? We would rule. You'd see more Sophia Youngs, you'd see more Dania Laforces, you'd see more Chris Bouchard, you'll see more Terrence Manns. You'll just see so much more of our children taking advantage of the opportunity that being an elite athlete has in the United States. You're talking about a free education. You're talking about, exposure to the professional level. You're talking about making millions and millions of dollars doing what you love, and that's something that has to be ingrained from a very, very young age. It's very easy to make excuses when it hasn't been ingrained. It's very easy to fall through the cracks when you don't understand the level of intangibles that's needed to become an elite athlete. I know there was a question in the chat about what it is that I do for the Atlanta Dream. I just want to address that before I forget. I am an assistant coach, so I'm responsible for training the guards in the program, as well as doing scout reports, which are reports preparing them for their next opponent. It's reports that tell them what the teams are going to run offensively, defensively, and their player personnel. And I'm also responsible for assisting the head coach and sharing ideas for practice planning as well as game management. So those are my responsibilities with the Atlanta Dream as an assistant coach. Terry, I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
That of Sophia and Sancho, two of those that I was alluding to when I spoke to you.
Yes, we could have a lot more. Yes, we could have a lot more. And it's our responsibility as coaches and as parents to give this next generation an opportunity to be those elite athletes.
I think Jamaica has had a few of those as well, with a similar netball background and graduating into basketball, or just being tall in some cases.
Yeah, it helps. Trust me, it helps.
As coaches, as basketball coaches like to say, you can't teach height.
Yes, that's for sure. Daddy. Any other questions?
Yes, we have another one in the chat from Miss Boyce. With elite development in mind, do you think there should be differences in approaches to coaching males versus females at the junior level?
Well, I've only coached females, so I could only tell you about coaching my sons, but the difference was between coaching them as opposed to my my females that I've coached. Honestly, I don't really think there should be a difference in the way you approach coaching athletes. I think understanding their, because I'm very big in being a mental coach as well. I think understanding their mental approach to the game of basketball, or their mental approach to being an athlete, is where the difference comes in. I think males can compartmentalize a lot easier than females do. And I say this because, males, I think when it comes to their sport, no matter what's going on outside or at home, or even within their team, in terms of team dynamics, they can show up and compete. That arena, that competition that they share really allows them to bond and really kind of fight under, in that same jersey. I think women, we bring a lot more to the table emotionally when we are asked to compete or be on the team. Team dynamics play a different part, I think, with female coaches than it does with male coaches. Male players. So as a coach, you have to understand what that female athlete is bringing to the table when they come to practice or come to a game. And I say this because being a collegiate coach, you also have to understand that there are also students. So, one of my players might be heavily concerned about the chemistry the exam that they have after practice, and they may not be as in tune or focused in practice because they're worried about their chemistry exam, or just other things that go on in their lives. I think female athletes tend to bring it into the gym and don't know really how to compartmentalize or separate it from the task at hand. So that's I think would be the biggest difference, and that's more of a coaching thing. Understanding your complete player is very important. And in order for you to get the best out of your player, you have to have a level of trust and a level of, I care about you more than just being an athlete. I care about you as a person. I care what's going on in your life. And when you develop that bond and that trust with your player, now you could ask them to run through a brick wall for you. Now you could ask them to go out there and compete. So I just think with female athletes, there's a component of it where as a coach, you're responsible to really develop a bond and understand what they bring to the table. Whereas I think with male athletes, sometimes they just compete, whether it's, cricket, soccer, they just compete. And they could not like the person sitting in the next locker over from them, but at the end of the day, they're going to go out and compete. That's probably one of the biggest differences I've noticed when it comes to coaching males, as well as watching how coaching females and watching how males are coached. And even my own son, I don't really have to worry about his ability to not handle things that are going on in his life, because I know he can handle that. And even if he doesn't handle it, once that ball's tipped up, he's ready to compete. So I think that's a big thing. But in terms of just teaching them the game and allowing them to find their niche, you expose them to everything. Like I said, my niche was defense. I really wasn't a great offensive player until I got into college, but my niche was defense. So I knew, and my coaches knew, I would go out there and get stops and block shots and defend one of their better players. So, you expose them to everything. A niche could be shooting the basketball. You have players that are getting paid millions of dollars just because they're great shooters. They can't defend, they can't pass, but they can shoot. It might be their IQ. It might be their passing ability. I think you, as a coach, should expose your male and female athletes to every skill set of that sport and allow them to find their niche. I hope that answers your question. You're welcome. You're welcome, Asha. Any other questions?
Sure. If you would allow me, Dania.
Yes.
Okay, Tara, let me hear of the National Cricket Association. You've mentioned cricket a few times. So,
yes.
That being my area.
Okay.
How would you describe the cricket, the sport of cricket, that discipline? What's going on over in your neck of the woods as far as cricket goes? Can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah,
cricket to develop, maybe promote and push cricket in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, cricket is definitely not a big sport here in America. My dad, actually, Trevor Scholar, he played cricket when growing up, and could have been really good. His brother Andre Scholar, I think, was very good at cricket too. So I'm exposed to cricket only because I know my dad loves the sport, and he will watch. I mean, he'll sit there on his little phone and watch cricket matches constantly. So I definitely know it's a big sport in the Caribbean. I really don't understand the game of cricket. I don't know. I just know you run back and forth. Excuse my ignorance. You run back and forth, but to me, I mean, you talk about it, it covers the gamut. Not only do you have elite athletes in cricket, elite performances, you also have great fans. You have fans that are committed and dedicated, and that's a sport right there. That pastime of watching cricket games is fun for the fans. The development of cricket players to become elite cricket players is what's all about. The competition, the travel from island to island to island and competing against different islands. That's what sports is all about. those opportunities to really travel, to really grow as an athlete, and to share your talent with fans, people out there who want to see you win and want to see you do well. So I wish it would be. And another sport that's not really big here is netball. Netball is not a very big sport here, but I do believe netballers can transition to basketball really, really easily. Obviously, their height and their athletic ability, I think, are two things that could transition over to basketball very, very well. But the cricket and the netball, growing up in New York within the Saint Lucia community, I had a chance to watch netball. I mean, there was a netball organizational federation in Brooklyn, and we would go on weekends to watch netball games. I really didn't see a lot of cricket games, but I know there are organizations and leagues for cricket as well. And those are really ran by Caribbeans. Not a lot of Americans have picked it up. It's really ran by a lot of the Caribbeans who were exposed to those sports and have brought it over to the United States and allow all the Caribbean community to still, value what those two sports can actually bring to a community. So that's my.
What I found when I visited in 2019 was that there are loads of Pakistanis and Indians who play the game up there in the States.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. But I wish, it's, the question should be, how do we get the Americans to embrace those two sports, and create, that should be the question,
That should be one of the focal areas that, we can probably look at, and who knows, maybe you can be a player in making that happen down the road.
Yeah, I would love to learn how to play netball. I think with my knees right now, that probably would be a sport that I would really excel in at my age. You stay on your end, right? There's no 1 or 2 dribbles or whatever, and then it's really neat to watch, to be honest with you. It's not as physical as basketball, but it's a little bit finesse. It's a little bit more of a finesse game, and I truly appreciated watching that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think there was another question or comment in the chat. Does anybody see that?
Yes, there was. I think it's Kyla Murray, who says that with my sport, I am the only female tennis coach on island, and some tend to think that the male coaches are more militant, more serious training, and have more potential in training male or female athletes. So do you compare yourself with your male colleagues? Do you think this is proven? And she says, I think I am quite able. Some think a male coach can do a better job.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, that's just a sign of society on a whole. I think males in general are perceived to be better at certain things than females. It's something that we have to constantly have to break the notion of and be challenged by. As me, being a female coach, I see it on a daily basis. A lot in the sport of women's basketball at a collegiate level. I think men are getting a lot more head coaching positions than females. It's starting to really switch over to that side. And you look at who's hiring. A lot of the people that are hiring those positions are males. A lot of athletic directors are males. So I think until we get female athletic directors to understand the importance of having female head coaches in female sports, I think we're going to continue to fight that battle. When the sport first started, it was all female coaches, and at the time, there was no money to be made in college coaching. Coaches were getting paid maybe $3,000 and had other responsibilities besides coaching. They were either a professor or worked in the athletic department. And now that college coaches are making, some of them well over $700,000 a year in the Power 5 conferences like the SEC, the ACC, the Pac-10. Now those jobs are even more lucrative to males. When they weren't being paid a lot, no males wanted to coach women's basketball, but now it's changing. And on the opposite, on the other end of it, you have a lot of athletes who feel that getting that sort of discipline coaching from a male is better than getting it from a female. You know, and that's something that until people's mindset changes about the coaching ability from a male and a female, I think we're going to continue to struggle with that as females in the sport. And I'm hoping one day that too can be shattered and that too can change, but it's still something that, you know, you're fighting with on your island as a tennis coach. And believe me, I fight with every single day as a college coach, as a coach. You know, so it's just something we have to continue to prove that we can be better at. I love the fact that Dawn Staley is, you know, as a Black female head coach, won the national title. So her position, her opportunity is now going to open doors for other Black female coaches out there. Now you have the NBA now hiring female coaches to be assistant coaches and putting them in the front office. You can definitely tell there's a momentum and a swing towards, you know, understanding that there isn't a difference when it shouldn't be a difference when it comes to gender, but you know, we're moving at a very, very slow pace. We're way behind, number one, and we're moving at a very, very slow pace. And then, you know, these jobs are now becoming very lucrative. And now the males are getting involved in coaching females. And it's something that hopefully the trajectory continues to improve and get better. But I feel you on that. It's something that you have got to just continue to fight through and prove yourself, maybe 10 times more than a male coach, unfortunately. But, you know, I think when we reach that championship level, we're holding up those trophies. That visual of seeing a Black female or female at the highest level winning those national championships really starts to change narrative in a lot of people's mind about the potential of female coaches.
Thank you. We have another question. So does the WNBA have programs that will provide assistance for the development of the game in small developing countries?
That is a great question, and I am not sure of the answer, but I definitely will look into that, because I think if they are not, if they haven't taken the opportunity to develop athletes from the smaller countries and islands, they should. And you know, maybe that could be my task as being a Caribbean, someone from the Caribbean. Maybe I could head that task to make sure that, you know, we're exposing our sport to the athletes in the Caribbean. I know that NBA does NBA Cares, and they have NBA Africa. I know they have done a phenomenal job with bringing that sport and their coaches to Africa, to those countries, to get them to be elite athletes and have elite coaching. So it's definitely something I will find out if we do. I don't know the answer to that, but I can guarantee you I will do due diligence and find out the answer. And if there isn't, maybe I'll be the poster child for that involvement.
Okay, good night. As reluctant to contribute because I'm on the road, so if you hear a lot of noise, just to indicate that the NBA, as you indicated, does have such programs.
Yes.
And in the Americas, the focus is more on the larger countries, the Puerto Rico,
right,
the Brazil, etc., etc.
Yes.
But we in the smaller islands, especially in the OECS, do not benefit as much, if we do at all, from those programs.
Right.
So I need to propose the question, because, and you did indicate that you're going to look into it, but I hope if such a program starts, because I don't think it exists, okay? I hope if that consideration will be given to the smaller islands,
yes,
because as you can see, we already have a track record of producing outstanding athletes who have played not only in the WNBA, but in the NBA. So the talent here, what
definitely
we have an issue with is the infrastructure for the game.
Agreed.
Okay, that is one. And secondly, our numbers are small.
Mm-hmm.
So the process that we normally use is that we'll try to bring the athlete up to a level where they could at least secure a scholarship in the States, but not just secure a scholarship, but bring them to a level that when that opportunity is provided to them, they could excel.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
So that's basically my answer. And it calls for a lot of mental work for them to plant those nuggets. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It won't happen overnight, but
Right.
over time they come to understand this is what it's about. But
Yes.
you're right, the challenges for women are much greater than that of male, because we have had a lot of talented athletes and the parents were just reluctant to have them take up scholarship offers. Okay. So because they're much more protective of the girls as compared to. But I really enjoy your presentation, and I look forward to communicating with you in the near future.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I have another question.
Okay.
Have you ever been in a situation where someone questions your ability to execute your role in sports as a result of your race or gender?
As a player or as a coach?
Both.
Okay. As I think there are underlying behaviors that people exhibit when they see a female athlete. It may not be explicit, but there are underlying subtle assumptions that are made. And I have experienced that, I've experienced that as an athlete, a female athlete, and also as a black woman. From a coaching perspective, being a black coach, like I said, there are subtle, not really explicit behaviors that are exhibited by people, and it's truly unclear. And let me give you a story about just my take on being a female coach. Majority of the players that play basketball are Black young women. So me being a Black coach, sometimes I have to balance being a coach and not them seeing me as a mother figure. My coaching, although I try to really develop that relationship with them where they can come to me and talk to me about anything, there comes a time where I have to be coach. And sometimes that's crossed because they see me as a mother figure. And mother figures give unconditional love, or mothers give unconditional love. So sometimes when they make mistakes, they expect me to overlook those mistakes and not really be disciplined with some consequences. So I find that dynamic for me, being a Black woman head coach and coaching Black players, sometimes when I'm supposed to be tough and I have to be tough and come down with very disciplined consequences, I kind of lose them because they feel like, you're supposed to be there for me unconditionally. You're supposed to love me unconditionally. You're supposed to excuse my behaviors and not, penalize me, not suspend me. But there comes a point where it's my job to make sure that my culture is fair. It's my job to make sure that everybody's following the rules. I can't, obviously favor you over somebody else simply because you're Black and I'm Black. So that's just an example of how being a female head coach who's Black and coaching Black athletes, sometimes they tend to see you as more than just their coach. And now when you have to coach them and discipline them, there's a little bit of a rift or a trust issue that kind of develops and makes it harder for me to coach them because they feel like I have betrayed them in a certain way. And I don't think the male coaches have to deal with that at all. I think the female athletes expect them to be the father figure. And the father figure in most households is the disciplinarian, is the one that, you know, whatever they say goes, and there's no questions to be asked. And so for me, that's probably a good example of how I feel like my race and my gender kind of clouds my ability sometimes to reach some of my athletes, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And does anyone else have a question?
I see my mom's on the call. Just want to shout out to my mom, Lucia Laforce. Thanks for listening.
I have one more question on my end. How effective do you think Title IX has been in ensuring that there are more female coaches in basketball or in the program?
You know, necessary to be implemented. I think college, from a collegiate perspective, obviously ADs are mindful of Title IX and how their female athletes number compared to their male athletes, but there's still a lot of lapses when it comes to equity between male and female sports. You know, we talked about infrastructure, we talked about facilities, and I could tell you as a female athlete and a female coach, our facilities compared to our men counterparts is not equal at all. The pay is not equal. They have some men's basketball coaches that are making well over millions of dollars a year to do the same job that I'm doing as a basketball coach, and I'm not being paid nearly as much as they are being paid. So when you talk about facilities, you talk about pay, you talk about even, you know, practice times. You know, the male coaches get the male players or male programs get the better practice times, and the women have to sometimes find alternate practice times based around their schedule. Travel, you know, the budget, the budgets for collegiate men's program is way more than the budget for female programs. Some men's basketball programs charter, whereas the females have to fly commercial. You know, training tables, which is meals that are provided. Meals, there's some programs that provided for their male athletes and not their female athletes. You know, I can go down a list of things that doesn't equal equity when it comes to females and males in the same sport. That's why I think Title IX needs to be not only just in the background or parameter, but also more on the forefront and making sure that these athletes are being treated equally. I don't know if you guys remember the last year's NCAA tournament. It was brought to the national attention that the males in the NCAA tournament were being treated way better than the females. Their facilities were much better. Their weight rooms were much better. Their courts were much better. Even the media and the promotions surrounding the men's tournament was way better than the women's tournament. So for that fact, I think Title IX needs to transcend just beyond just numbers, making sure you have the same number of male athletes and female athletes, but also when it comes to travel, when it comes to budget, when it comes to salary, when it comes to facility, when it comes to every opportunity, it should be equal. And that's where I think Title IX can and should be implemented, and not only when it comes to the numbers of the sport.
Thank you. I think you answered my question. Do we have any other comments or questions?
Ralph has a question in the chat.
Yes.
I can't really see it.
Then, yeah. Is it correct to say that when dealing with female players, a female coach could be more effective in many situations? Female players might be more comfortable and open to a female coach, and the female coaches may better understand the female player with female-related matters.
Definitely, I think there is value to having a female coach as a female player. And, you know, sometimes I think female players want a male coach. And that's the beauty of being able to choose your coach. You choose what will get you to perform your best. And there's nothing wrong with a female wanting to be coached by a male. And there's nothing wrong with a female only wanting to be coached by another female. I just think it's a matter of preference. It's a matter of understanding you as an athlete, what motivates you, what gets you to compete or to jump or perform at another level. I think as an athlete, you have to understand that. We tell, you know, when we're recruiting high school athletes, you know, that's one of the questions that we ask them, you know, and you will find recruitable athletes only going for programs that have what they feel they need to be the best athlete that they can be. There's some athletes that only want to be coached by males, and there's some athletes that only want to be coached by females. So I think it's more of a preference, and it's something that an athlete should evaluate prior to making that decision. And there's nothing wrong with it. I think both a male and a female coach should be able to understand the athlete, the complete player, not just the physical part of the game, but also the mental part of the game. And I think whether you are a male coach or a female coach, in order to get the best performance from that athlete.
I hope this answered your question. Do we have any other questions before we end? I guess not.
Well, it was definitely a pleasure sharing with you guys. It's getting kind of dark out here. But I do want to provide, I will provide you, you have my email address, obviously.
Yes, I do.
So if you want to share it with the audience, that's fine with me. If you guys ever have any questions, comments, concerns, or want to understand how you can get your elite athletes an opportunity, whether it's a college opportunity or an opportunity to even go to prep schools. There's a lot of prep schools in the United States that are recruiting Caribbean athletes in every sport. And that's something that I really want to highlight. It's not only the college scholarship opportunity, but prep schools. And prep schools, we're talking anywhere from, 10 years old all the way up to high school. There are a lot of prep schools in the United States who want athletes from the Caribbean, soccer athletes, basketball athletes, track athletes. I have a great connection there as well. So feel free to reach out to me. I would love to continue to help in any way I can. And, let's continue to develop elite athletes coming out of the Caribbean.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you very much. And thank you for coming. Thank you to Mr. Finisterre. Thank you to everyone who participated in our workshops over the past few days. This is the final one. It will be available on our YouTube channel, that is Saint Lucia Basketball Federation on YouTube.